Kosovo is often remembered through its violent past and the NATO intervention in the late 1990s. But before the war, there was another often forgotten story of non-violent resistance and of attempts to solve the conflict through peaceful means. This is the story of Ibrahim Rugova's political movement in Kosovo and why it still matters today. My name is Petrit Deoli and I'm interested in international history and geopolitics. And in this channel I will look at how historical events can help us better understand current political issues and the relationship between states. Kosovo is a small country in the Western Balkans, bordering Albania, Montenegro, Serbia and North Macedonia. It declared independence from Serbia in 2008 and is recognized by many countries, although Serbia and several others still do not recognize it. Rugova's movement began as a response to the loss of political rights among Kosovo Albanians in former Yugoslavia. But it was more than just a protest movement. It became a strategy to build political legitimacy, to create unity among Kosovo Albanians, and to raise international awareness of what was going on in Kosovo. This video is not about claiming that non-violence ultimately solved the conflict in Kosovo. Obviously, it did not. But it still matters for Kosovo's political legacy and for the historical lessons it can offer us today. Now, to understand why this strategy remains relevant, we need to examine the historical background that made the efforts necessary in the first place. 1912-1913 are crucial to this understanding. After the Balkan Wars, which ended Ottoman rule over the Balkan Peninsula, the region currently known as Kosovo today came under the control of the Kingdom of Serbia and was later incorporated into the Yugoslav state. This was part of a wider post-Ottoman struggle to establish borders along ethnic, historical, political and strategic lines. As a result, a large part of the Albanian population found itself outside of the Albanian state in territories recognized by the international community as belonging to other states. The next significant political turning point came in 1974 when Kosovo was given an upgraded status as an autonomous province within the Republic of Serbia. This change was formalized in the 1974 Yugoslav constitution, and it was significant because Kosovo's majority population, made up of ethnic Albanians, could now participate politically and promote their rights in a very different way than they could before. Kosovo gained representation within the Yugoslav federal state, it had its own government, and enjoyed substantial autonomy in local administration. In practice, Kosovo now had many of the political structures associated with a republic in Yugoslavia, but formally it was still not recognized as one. For many Kosovo Albanians, this was seen as a disappointment, but nevertheless, the constitutional changes of 1974 represented a major political victory for the majority Albanian population in Kosovo. The final important year for this historical background is 1989. Kosovo's position as an autonomous province within Serbia did not last for long. After Tito's death in 1980, political tensions increased across Yugoslavia and extreme nationalist forces gained more political influence. Many of these groups were deeply opposed to the decentralization of political power that had followed the 1974 constitutional changes. After years of rising political tension during the 80s, Kosovo's autonomy was effectively revoked in 1989. Its political rights were reversed and Kosovo was again brought under direct control of Belgrade. This was the political moment that gave rise to Rugova's movement. The Kosovo Albanians had lost their political rights and the autonomy they had gained under the 1974 constitution. And now the question became how to respond. Now, let's examine how political groups in Kosovo, led by Rugova, responded to the loss of their political rights. First and foremost, he emphasized one essential principle. That was that the movement had to pursue its political goals through non-violent means. But what makes this strategy interesting is that it was not only about preventing the situation from escalating into violence. It was also about creating an alternative space for political participation. And this was done mainly through three methods. The first, unifying political groups to prevent misalignments. The second, the internationalization of the conflict. And the third, the creation of parallel state institutions. The first step of unification was crucial for the strategy's success. In the late 1980s, Kosovo was home to several political and ideological currents with divergent allegiances and priorities. Rugova's first political achievement was to unite many of these groups around a common strategy. The movement was open to all political currents, but they had to all agree on a common, non-violent foundation with the ultimate aim of establishing a democratic political order oriented towards the West. The next step, that of internationalizing the conflict, aimed to secure strong political support, mainly in Western Europe and the United States. An extensive diplomatic effort was made, primarily by Rugova, who was an academic, intellectual and writer with educational experience from Western Europe. In this process, it was essential to present a political message that was compatible with the views of those they sought support from. Therefore, Rugova emphasized that their message was built on democratic principles, fundamental human rights, and non-violence as a means to achieving political goals. It was a targeted and coherent effort aimed at influential political actors and international organizations. The goal was to raise awareness of the struggles of the Kosovo Albanians and to present it through a clear message. This was especially important in a period of major political and ideological change in Europe, marked by the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the democratization process of Eastern Europe. But internationalization and unity around a common strategy were not enough. The third and perhaps most concrete action concerned local bodies and daily administration. The purpose was to delegitimize the regime that had reversed Kosovo's constitutional rights in 1989 and taken control over the local administration. The political structure built around Rugova established parallel institutions in essential areas such as health, education, culture, religious practice, and social life. These were some of the most essential state institutions, with the obvious exception of policing and security. The main purpose of these parallel institutions was to demonstrate, first and foremost to the majority population in Kosovo, that their leaders had both the ability and will to govern core institutions. They provided an alternative to the Serbian-backed administration, they helped delegitimize the authorities in Belgrade, and they signaled to the international community that the Kosovo Albanians had both the desire and capacity for self-government. The Albanian political leaders justified this step by pointing out that the representatives appointed by the Serbian authorities were neither democratically elected nor enjoyed popular support. The creation of parallel institutions was also a way for the general public to participate, outside of demonstrations and direct protest, in the resistance to political exclusion. As a result of these efforts, Rugova and his political movement enjoyed broad domestic and international support for much of the 1990s. They had a unified leadership, enjoyed popular support, made legitimate political demands, and demonstrated the ability to organize society. Therefore, the strategy was not just resistance and the absence of violence. It was a way to create space for political participation and to build legitimacy. But this did not mean that Rugova's strategy was without limitations. By the end of the 1990s, parts of the movement began to question whether non-violence was sufficient. In light of wider developments in Yugoslavia, where violent conflict often led to political compromise or to independence, many in Kosovo also concluded that armed resistance was the only realistic way to achieve political goals. The non-violent strategy had worked internally in Kosovo, but it did not produce clear political concessions from the Yugoslav authorities. Although the international community broadly supported and encouraged the Albanian struggle, it did little to pressure the regime in Belgrade to restore Kosovo's autonomy or to accept a political settlement. For instance, Kosovo was not part of the vital Dayton Agreement in 1995, which ended the war in Bosnia and helped stabilize the wider region. Rugova and his nonviolent politics thus became increasingly sidelined. As Serbian repression intensified and peaceful demands continued to be ignored, armed resistance among Kosovo Albanians gained support and the situation escalated into violent conflict. The international community then witnessed ethnic cleansing and mass atrocities before NATO intervened in March 1999, carrying out airstrikes against what remained of Yugoslavia and brought the immediate violence to an end. Although the conflict ultimately turned violent, these political efforts laid an important foundation for Kosovo's political future and for the international community's support. They demonstrated a widespread will in Kosovo to resolve the conflict peacefully, using methods that reflected broader democratic and geopolitical developments in Europe. But the Kosovo case also shows limits to this strategy. If peaceful demands are ignored for too long, non-violent movement can lose credibility and more desperate alternatives can gain support, as we saw in Kosovo. The will to resolve the conflict peacefully persisted for many years, yet the conflict still escalated to war. That is why this often forgotten side of Kosovo's political history needs to be told and remembered, not only as a story of political organization and legitimacy, but also as a warning about what can happen if peaceful democratic demands are ignored for too long.